Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our mission briefing number 5 for Impellers in the Black, a hardcore space combat simulator, which is based on a core pillar of realism, which realism in terms of Newtonian physics. Speaking of which, that's going to be a great focus of our talk today about the science of In the Black. We've seen a lot of great questions, not only from our trailer video, but also from our Steam page and our Discord server. All those links in the description for the video. But a lot of people have been asking about the science of the game and how true it is to realism. I mentioned on early mission briefing that we got some great interest from a project manager over at a great space agency that will remain unnamed for now, but we hope to have him on a future live stream. So we're going to dive into all those topics today, and to help me with that, I am very honored to welcome my good friend David Westman, the producer of the game. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
I am doing really well, thank you.
Dave, as you can see, has a nice library behind him. He's also an avid board game player. But wow, oh my gosh!
and underneath my desk, there's about 25 more boxes of books, mostly science fiction novels.
I believe it. And so, for those who don't know, or didn't catch the earlier live stream, I'm the founder of the studio. My involvement really is on the weekends in my spare time, just helping with some of the logistical needs of the studio in terms of biz and funding and stuff. The real day-to-day developer of the studio are people like Dave Westman. We also have a great friend who's been part of the team nearly since the beginning. I'm going to introduce him right now. He's sitting in the wings. I'm going to give a big welcome to Zach. Hey, Zach, how you doing?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me here, Ed. Mark.
Are you kidding? Thanks for coming. Listen, I think this is going to be a great live stream for people that have been following the game, but also people who are just brand new to the game, who don't know exactly what we're trying to go for in terms of the science of space combat and our vision of what things could theoretically and plausibly look like a few years from now. We dived into the past about kind of the storyline and the narrative and corporations, so we're not going to really touch on that today. But want to really dive into some of those questions that we've been seeing on, like I said, on the Steam page and on the trailer video on YouTube, as well as some comments from that great LT Gaming video that reviewed the demo. Speaking of which, the demo is live for everybody, so you go right to our Steam page. We're going to do a quick recap before we dive into bringing Zach on for the full discussion. We're going to do a quick recap now about what the team accomplished over the past several days and what we're doing over the next week or so. The purpose of these mission briefings is to basically give insight on what the studio's been working on since the last mission briefing. So we're going to do this every Saturday. So you guys get a really good inside view of what the core team has been working on day to day, and you get to hear about what we're working on next. I think it's a great thing to be not only transparent, but to get feedback from the community playing the game is just super helpful. And that's why we have that in-game feedback system, which is press F8 for. So a lot of that feedback does determine our priorities. So keep that feedback coming. All right. So the other thing I want to mention is that we are updating the game on a weekly cadence, actually, which is something that Jack Mamias and the team have really been focused on. We think that's really critical to having good momentum and support from the community, because it gives them a reason to not only keep coming back and check out the game, but provide feedback and get us ready for early access, which, as we've talked about before, is planned for late this year or early next year. The team is making that big decision over the next coming days, actually. They've been looking at all the feedback and looking to see what is really critical for early access and what can we do during early access. And just as a general high level, we want to have, obviously, everything working in the game for early access in terms of bugs, any kind of really blockers that are there. There are things that will be a critical part of early access is polish and is optimizations and obviously some content in terms of levels and things like that. But we feel like we have a pretty good early access build going right now. We're just trying to integrate a lot of the improvements we've been making based on your feedback. So really exciting times. Okay, so Zach, before we go into what the team did this week, because I want to say hello to everybody watching in the live chat. So if you're watching live, thanks for joining. Let us know where you're watching from. That's always cool to see. If you watch this as a replay, thanks for watching. And feel free to also engage in our Discord server afterwards, where we have a channel to talk about live streams. Okay, Zach. So let everybody know what, because I think people could be very impressed and probably surprised that we have someone with your caliber that's been working with the team for so long. But I don't think players who have been playing the game will be very surprised because of the way we've kind of embraced the realism in the game, and from a Newtonian physics and a shipbuilding perspective and weapons. So before we go into that, why don't you tell me what your background is and kind of like what your focus is on the game?
Well, the joking title, but I think there's some merit to it, is that I am the science guy. The technical term is technical consultant, but I am a doctor of aerospace and mechanical engineering, graduated last year. And my role was making sure that we got the science right, but also figuring out what we need to do in order to achieve however these ships are meant to move. Are there factors that we haven't considered? And this keeps coming up in the most unexpected ways. For instance, when we're looking for visual effects for nukes, for instance, that ended up being a differential equation combined with hydrodynamics. There's sciences you don't expect to come up in this field. And this makes for, it helps our we don't look like anything else because of it. No one's delved in this deeply.
Yeah.
We keep discovering these new things.
And I think what's been really surprising to me, we touched on this a couple weeks ago when Jack Lamias, the director, was here. We talked about, the kind of question in all of our heads, I think, was, could this be done in a way that it's still fun as a game? And I think the resounding answer to that, thankfully, through feedback from not only our beta, but also in the demo that's out right now, is that, yes, it definitely is a lot of fun. I think it takes skill and some practice to master some things, of course, like every good game, I think. But there is definitely a funness to this game that I think we were all very, very happy to see come about by putting all these things together. Well, Zach, we have super fortunate. So we're going to take questions from the audience.
Okay.
So now everybody knows who you are and kind of your background. I want everyone to just guide your questions to Zach. Feel free to post anything you like. I'm going to go over really quick what the team has worked on in the past week and what they're working on next, and then we're going to circle back to the science discussion. So Dave, you have been working with the team actually on the patches and the Steam updates. We have got some great things in the works for actually improving the main menu and having more information accessible to players. One of the big items we got early on when the demo came out was that people wanted to see more training and onboarding and more information about the weapons and how to use them, how to fly. And that was a really, really important feedback for us to have. You have been working on a pilot manual for years, which is actually pretty in-depth and available to everybody. If you go to our Steam page and you go to manual, you'll see it there. You also see it in the guide section of Steam. There's a bit.ly link for it we can put in the chat. But that's pretty deep, right? And that's great. But I think what the challenge is, a lot of new players probably don't go there first. They want to dive into the game really quickly. And that's probably normal. I mean, a lot of us will probably do the same thing when they're trying a new game. So what we thought would be a really good thing to do, which is not in the game yet, but Remco, our technical artist, is working on this right now in terms of the UI, is incorporating some manuals and tips and tricks into the main menu of the game so people can easily get help and see, okay, how do I do a flip and burn, for example? How do I adjust the thrusters on the game so have more control, or maybe they want things more automated. So we're trying to teach things really quickly in like 30 seconds. People understand the basic comments, because without that, I think for first-time player, they're used to the typical space combat games where it's basically unrealistic and using airplane air flight mechanics. So it's a really big awakening when you go in the game and we're using actual space mechanics, Newtonian physics. So I'm really happy to see that kind of work. The team did do a patch this week. I think some of the main things that were done have to do with a toggle in the options for zoom, activating the zoom so that players don't have to hold a button to zoom, which is great. The team fixed the UI bug in the options menu that caused some options to get reset to default. There's a new release process automation happening to ensure timely patches for players with more detailed patch notes. I think that's super welcome and very great information for players to see exactly what was done. Players can now, thanks to Alex, great work on Alex on improving our feedback system, which is such a critical part of the game, especially for early access, is this feedback system. And one question we got last week, actually, in the live stream that was addressed within days was, hey, if I submit a feedback in the game, what if I want to follow up with that feedback, maybe with screenshots or video or more detailed information on the game's Discord server, which is just discord.gg/InTheBlack. Well, Alex quickly went to work and assigned basically ID to all of your feedback. So when you submit a feedback post, you get an ID at the bottom of the screen. There's a quick button to copy that, and then you could copy and paste that into a follow-up chat, whether it's on Steam or whether it's on a Discord server. So that's great. Allows us to really, and I will say that feedback is great on Steam. It's great to see that on the Discord server. It is most helpful in the game because we have a very tuned system for integrating that feedback directly from players, prioritizing it, assigning it to devs right from the game. When you're putting feedback in other places, it's a lot more work for the team, and some information could be lost in that process, and maybe we don't see it right away. So please use the F8 button in the game. Obviously, if you think of something we're not playing, absolutely put it wherever it's most convenient. But try to get used to putting feedback in the game. That's the most helpful. And then regarding early access, the team has shared with me over the past couple of days. They're going to continue working on the input system overhaul to support multiple input devices. We talked about this last week. This is huge for flight sim fans that have joysticks, pedals. So they're going to basically, they've been revamping this to really do more full support, including adding input profiles along with importing, exporting of action mappings so players can share their config with the community. But that is also super awesome. So I'm very glad to see that. I know, because in case people missed the chat last week, we also shared that head tracking support is high up on our priority list. We'll probably be added to the demo and not too far from now, but definitely be part of early access. So no need to keep pinging us on that because it's in progress. Okay, cool. So I see some great people joining us in the chat. Hey, MK Powers. I see Robert here. Very good to see you guys. Thank you for joining today. We do this we're going to do this every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's the plan. Okay, so let me see. I'm looking at the effects work. Okay, so I have to talk to the effects team because I do not see any update here on what they did in the patch for the effects. So Jack, if you're watching this, this is missing from our update doc, which I need every week for these live streams. So we'll talk about that internally when I finish the live stream today. If Jack, you're able to provide an update on that, let me share with the community. Just post it to me on Discord. I'll share it here. The idea for these live streams, not only for the community watching, but also for our team, if you're watching, is this is our 1 week to let the community know everything we're working on, what's next, including my opportunity to check it out too, as I'm not working on the project during the week. Okay, so we're about halfway through the 30 minutes. I want to make sure we're doing these live streams. Let's get right to the meat of the topic, which is science. So Zach, I think you've actually been instrumental in several different areas of science in the game. I think the big one is probably the ship design. There's also the weapons systems themselves. There's also the effects in the game, right? Those are the three biggies, I think. Am I leaving anyone out for major topics?
There is work on the background as well. There are additional features which may or not come in. This depends on how relevant we find them to design and to gameplay. Some of this we're still discovering.
Yes.
Zach's been very involved in the world building as well, defining the different corporations and what their focus is and what drives the conflict in the solar system.
Okay, so that's super helpful because I think we're going to dedicate a whole a mission briefing on the backstory and the world building, because I think that just deserves a whole show. That'll probably have to be more like an hour show at least. But on that topic, really quickly, we do see a good question here from the chat. This is from Robert from YouTube. He's asking, how much did the show Expanse actually change what we were doing with the game? And this is something that I think a lot of people would not realize, especially if you're new to the game. We started working on this game literally 14 years ago. That is a long time, but way before I had gray hair, way before my daughter was even born. And she's in
degrees ago, as I like to joke.
We started this game a long time ago, and we actually started this long before the Expanse was ever anything on TV, right? I think
Robert does bring that up, actually.
What's that?
Robert does bring that up, actually, in their next comment.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so let me look for it here.
I can address that.
Okay, cool. Oh, he does. Yeah.
So I had read the novels about the time they were published, which started in 2011. And the novels portray space combat a bit more realistically than the TV series does. So I was really enjoying the novel series. And then when the TV series came out, it immediately became my favorite sci-fi series of all time, because it came the closest to portraying things realistically. And it was a great way to introduce new members of the team to our vision. And it just is like, okay, if you're going to join this team, you have to watch The Expanse.
Yeah, it's a great show, but I want to clarify, because that could be a little confusing to people. This was started and the design was locked in. The adherence to Newtonian physics was before, and before actually you came on the team, not from the start. Actually, you came in a little bit afterwards. I had been working with some team members from the Two Dawn group in the beginning after we did Ravaged. And then Jack came on, and then luckily you came on. So it's definitely evolved over time. But our interest and design of the game, I think, was also inspired by 2001: Space Odyssey, and things along that nature, where they're really like going for, okay, what does space really look and feel like? And at that time, there really were no actually other space games. So I think that's been so to me, when Expanse came out, as we were developing, this was after our Kickstarter. So you got to see actually our video from Kickstarter was before the Expanse was out. And even during the Kickstarter, people were like, whoa. And the second Kickstarter was like, oh my gosh, like this is this is so different. So we were very excited to see that, wow, what we're thinking of actually really works. And look at how these guys are visioning a very similar thing. So it's really, it was very validating, I think, in my mind, that, okay, we were onto something.
That's exactly how I intended to put it myself. It was incredibly validating to see that this was popular.
We're just, and we're also just big fans. I think the Expanse is a great story, but I think doing realism for games is not a very common thing, because, like I said, it's really tough to get the gameplay correct. But I think that's something that we've shown to be true.
I want to say that period there was also some really good, fairly hard science fiction movies like The Martian and, to a lesser extent, Gravity. Interstellar isn't that hard, but it's still significantly harder than many things that came before around that period.
Yeah. Yep. So speaking of that, okay,
let's the starships in Avatar.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
They're tremendously well designed for what the rest of the world looks like.
All right, so let's get into that, because there's some of the questions that we see asked over and over again have to do with, hey, why is there audio in the game, or why are there things that you really would not see or hear in space in this game? And there's a very good explanation for how those things exist in the black, and actually how they exist in real life as well. Many people may not realize this, but the military today does use lasers, and they use electronic warfare in their operations. And for safety reasons, what they do is they actually apply sound effects to these things, like laser weapons, so that military personnel actually hears when the weapon is operating, right? So it's no different from electric cars that are very quiet, and most of them incorporate a fake sound so that you get that feedback, and not only you, but the people around you, right? So in our game, early on, we implemented a system called DLSS. Zach or Dave,
TSS.
No, I'm sorry, DSS. I'm thinking of NVIDIA's tech.
The decision support system, yes.
DSS. So decision support system. So Dave and Zach, why don't you go into a little bit about what DSS actually does, and why it's used in this game?
We basically extrapolated from the F-35 and the Eurofighter Typhoon and the systems that have been developed, particularly for the F-35 with the distributed aperture system. So you've got sensors embedded in the aircraft that allow the pilot to see everything around them as if there was no plane at all. Right? They can look down and see through the aircraft. And yeah, extrapolating that forward, how the pilot develops and maintains their situational awareness. It's like, well, you're terrestrially evolved monkey brain, so it's going to be helpful if we give you 3D positional audio cues and visual cues that aren't actually there, but it's all based on sensor data to present that information to the pilot in a meaningful way that's instantly and easily grasped.
Yeah.
Yes. So clearly there is no sound in space. You would very technically still hear things on board your own spaceship. For instance, if something hits your wing, it's going to be transmitted through the solid material. But those audio cues give you better situational awareness, and it is easier for the pilot to process than simply placing additional visual cues, for instance.
Yeah.
Or in the case of lasers, again, the lasers would be essentially invisible in space. But again, figuring out where you're being shot from is incredibly useful information to have that your ship computer can extrapolate.
Yes, I think it's super important for that situation awareness. The other thing, I'm turned off my camera for some reason. I'm remote right now in New York, and it's flipping my camera. But the DSS system. So basically, that enables your computers on board the ship to kind of, because obviously your ship has the information on what weapons are being fired, what's happening outside of the ship. So for situational awareness, it's recreating that sound for the pilot, which means actually that those things can be customized in the future, right? Because it's basically made up anyway. So one of the ideas for customization for the game, which will also help with monetization, is that players will be able to have custom sound effects. So if you don't like the way something sounds, you could just pick one of the other sounds, and it obviously is done just for you anyway. So it's very plausible, and just makes sense that you'd be able to customize that. So some people might like to have old school type of sounds. Some people might like Star Wars type of sounds, or anything in between.
The officially licensed Looney Tunes pack.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, why not? And so that also does not just apply to sound, right? It can apply to the visuals in the game, right? Because a lot of the visuals are kind of can be broadcast by your HUD and by on the canopy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few cases where we pretty much have to do so for the player to just realize the presence of threats. For instance, if a nuke goes off, the fireball extinguishes itself so quickly you shouldn't be able to see it as more than just an instant flash. But that might be easy to miss, as hard as it sounds. Just using the DSS to extend that, for instance, letting you know how much danger you're in.
Yeah. And we're getting some good comments here in the chat. Let me see if I could show Robert here. On the stuff hitting, you should come through in a realistic way to make it more visceral. But that stuff needs to be present, or it's too boring. That's true. I think that's one thing that that we want to make sure that it's a fun experience for all the players, of course.
There's one other factor I want to bring up regarding the DSS is that because it is based on your sensors and computer, it can theoretically be shut off or destroyed. If your sensors are damaged enough, you can no longer extrapolate this information. Space has become silent again because now your ship is drifting blind. That is something we intend to go further into in the future.
Or it could be degraded or distorted due to electronic warfare or information warfare.
Yeah, and then we've actually heard a lot of questions about that. Will we be implementing some kind of electronic warfare in the game? And what do you guys? We talked a little bit in the past, but what do you guys want to share about that now?
Well, one of the things that we're fleshing out the design now and thinking about how we're going to implement it is the idea of a distributed network. So all of the allied ships and platforms that are in the battle space with you are sharing information. So you might not have a direct line of sight on something. You might even have your sensors in passive mode, but allies are active and scanning for you and sharing that data with you.
This is one of the ways that you can see behind an asteroid, for instance. If that seemed very strange to some of you players, that's because another player's camera is seeing it and linking it to you.
And one of the gameplay mechanics associated with this is that the more friendlies that are in the battle space that are providing you data on a particular target, the quicker you're able to get an accurate lock on that target, and the more accurate your weapons will be.
Yeah, nice comment here from Robert. Oh, cool. Fully silent running might lead to stuff going quiet if silent running ever becomes a thing. I mean, that could be pretty cool also, right?
Well, silent is a funny thing. It's whether I'm being really loud and attracting a lot of attention, or I'm still easily detectable, but I'm not drawing attention to myself. Just on infrared, you're not going to be able to hide.
Yeah, we need a nice comment here from MK Powers on YouTube. I always thought having audio created artificially made sense for humans. I totally agree. It's really such an important thing for situational awareness. So it just makes sense. Okay, so that's the DSS, or Decision Support System, which will be continually evolving over the course of the game. So absolutely, give us your feedback on what kind of things you'd like to see the DSS cover, or what kind of customizations you'd like to see, so we can kind of add that. Let me ask you.
I would like to add for at least the base implementation of the DSS, while it's created, and we could theoretically justify basically anything we want. After all, it's made up by the computer. We still try to have those at least resemble something in reality for the sake of.
Yeah, makes total sense. I mean, that's the goal, of course. And we understand, like, these things are going to weed out some players, right? That just are looking for more arcadey experience, and that is totally cool. There are some great games that we're also big fans of that's what they go for, the more arcadey experience. We've all worked on those games as developers in the past. This is just something very different and more of a niche for sim fans. So hopefully we're hitting and finding those people who like it, and we'll keep improving with your feedback. Jack actually wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to ask you, Zach, about orbital mechanics, because that's another area that you've also been very instrumental for. Why don't you shed a little more insight on your background on why you know so much about orbital mechanics and kind of what that means for In the Black?
Well, while I was never in space industry personally, I was a computational physicist for a DOE program for a short time. Sadly, that didn't last very long. However, I have built little orbital integrators, which I tested for In the Black, since we want to see what on most people who don't work in something space related, the best intuitive understanding of orbital mechanics probably comes from playing Kerbal Space Program. But even that doesn't necessarily grant you intuition for In the Black for two reasons. And the first is that Kerbal Space Program planets are deliberately made super dense and super small. You're moving much faster around bodies of this size than you would be the real ones. And the other thing is that you have time warp, where you can see these things much clearer, and the body being smaller and still moving fast, because that high density also kind of exaggerates the effect. For our missions, we did test out this feature, and we saw that at realistic sizes, over the length of our missions, you would have to stay still to notice most of the effects. And in practice, your ship is constantly moving just in order to acquire targets. The most notable place was around really small moons like Mimas and Enceladus, but there the orbital speed is so slow, on the order of like tens of meters per second, that your ship velocity, if you're going 100 meters per second, it's still basically a straight line, even with orbital mechanics, because you're going so much faster than orbital speed. And other missions, for instance, if you're very high above Saturn, the planet moves about you so slowly just because of your orbit that you still don't see it, even then. So that's it would be a really neat feature, but it's incredibly unlikely a player would actually notice the effects. And
Interesting.
that's why we didn't invest heavily into it.
That makes sense. And we have had people ask, how does gravity and things affect? And we do have some missions which people have not seen yet, who have just seen the demo, which will be included in our early access, where you're the interior of asteroids. Is that right, Dave?
Well, that excuse me. And there's also we have some scenarios that are set in the south polar region of Enceladus, and there is gravity. So if you aren't paying attention, you're at risk of crashing into the surface. It's not easy to avoid that because your ship is so powerful, but we are simulating it. It is there.
Very cool. Yeah, I think these are the kinds of things that that we're going to be sharing a lot more information of as we get closer to early access. And the other question we get a lot of is, why would fighters be used instead of capital ships? Right. So
Yeah.
this is a fun one, and I think that that we've had a lot of great discussion about this internally.
I want Zach to answer this because I know he'll do a great job. But before he does, I want to share a really quick little anecdote of how we found Zach. The Atomic Rockets website gives its seal of approval sparingly, and Zach had designed a fighter that they had recognized as, this actually makes sense. And so I reached out to Zach, hey, can we use your fighter design in our game? And he said no.
But I'll happily make more fighters for you.
Right,
I just like that.
Yeah,
Let that one be mine.
No, because he had something planned for that design, but he offered to design more fighters for us, and that has led to a very fruitful collaboration.
It's just for the purposes of this discussion and earlier questions, it's funny you bring up the exacting fighter because that has a fusion drive. That is a ship that would fit in the Expanse extremely well, their tech level. It actually does not fit Kurt in the black very well at all. It's like much higher tech. It is an Expanse-derived ship before the Expanse was around, or at least the TV show.
Yeah, but tell people why fighters? What's the justification for fighters?
So there are a few ways that you can justify them that I'm sorry, that was good. That was good. Okay. Essentially, fighters fight very differently from capital ships. Fighters, just due to their size, you're thinking at much smaller ranges because you have smaller weapons. There are locations that are relatively close-knit in the solar system, as surprising as it might sound. For instance, or if you're around small targets like asteroids, if you're within the rings of Saturn, which was one of the very first missions we were looking at. But these small ranges also makes them and their smaller size also means they're basically able to rotate much more quickly. They have lower rotational inertia. It makes fighters much more responsive than capital ships. To give an example of this, it's not particularly hard to turn the Shrike. If you tried to turn our carrier, the Atlas, it turns out that the sideways force, just to make it rotate across itself in a minute, is so great you would be thrown into the walls. It's equivalent to having 1G to one side. Not exactly ideal for 15-minute mission scenarios. But there's one other factor which influences the world building, and that is in a world of readily available high explosives, in our universe, basically it's very easy to get DIY nukes. A fighter is easily able to take on a ship much larger than it. On one missile can take out, well, it has to be a sufficiently powerful missile, could take out a carrier, but you need several missiles to take out a group of fighters if they're spaced out. On top of that, there's a political consideration for the world building, which is if you have a dedicated kilometer warship, you're declaring war. This is a political nightmare. The corporations, at least at the moment, are not out for blood. They're merely trying to sabotage each other. They're trying to have, what's the word I'm looking for? Some form of plausible deniability. They can pretend, oh, it's the Leith terrorists who are doing this, or oh, this was very clearly just local mechanical failures, and we sent our carrier to survey the area. But perhaps in the future we'll be able to examine larger ships, and those could be fun enemies for you to fight.
Yeah, I agree too. I think Jack has also discussed a few times about the plan to do multi-crewed ships, which I think a lot of people also in the community have also been asking about how fun it would be for one person to be in charge of flying and the other person to be in charge of the weapons. And so we definitely have some plans for that, and that will be super exciting. All right, so speaking about ships, let's talk about the cockpits and the fact that we're leveraging kind of see-through glass and windows, and how much sense that makes for a realistic perspective. When I know some ships realistically would probably use some kind of projection, right, on some kind of thicker material.
Well, some of this is the very earliest designs for the game were the Shrike and the Hyperion, and they had traditional cockpits. And so Zach had to retrofit the science into them. And for the Canopy material, transparent aluminum is an amazing material. So it's not just glass. And we'll share more lore in the future, explaining how those craft fit into a realistic development timeline for combat spacecraft. But all of the craft that we've introduced since then, except for the Colibri, have a more sensible layout where the crew is protected.
In a world of, at least in our backstory, we were going to have a lot of EMPs, a lot of information warfare. In that case, being able to use mechanical controls, being able to fly with your computer not working, that's a case for using a glass cockpit. Now, admittedly, you would still have to be very good because, of course, things are miles away. That's the spec you're shooting for. But radiation-wise, it's actually not that big a concern just because your ship is only out there for a few hours. Space is deadly, but if you're not floating around the moon of Io, it's not going to kill you by being out. The radiation is not going to kill you that quickly.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And I think that I think the idea is that also, as we kind of find the right balance in the game based on more feedback from players and talking and diving into the more science of things, you're going to see a nice evolution of these things and probably more and more narrowed and fine-tuned focus on these areas, including ship design. I know a lot of people, we talked about this before on the mission briefing earlier, but the Shrike, for anyone who hadn't caught our earlier discussions, people say, oh, why does the Shrike have wings? That's so unrealistic, right? But those are not wings. Those are sensors, and they're actually deployable. So you can turn them on or off. And why would you have them off or on? I mean, that's a question. Actually, maybe I should have phrased that, or my intonation should be different. What is?
I didn't quite catch that. I'm sorry.
What is the gameplay reason for having the sensors on or off? Because there's a couple of big ones. I can say it if you don't want to say it.
Well, it's not actually implemented in game that way right now. There's meant to be a significant difference in your targeting ability when you go active sensors versus passive. Right now, the main practical use of going active is that it sends out basically like a radar ping that lights up everything around you. So if you're in the shadow of an asteroid or you're in tunnels, it's very helpful for navigation, for flying through that space and not colliding with anything. But it will eventually have actual combat relevance.
For the Shrike specifically, even though this isn't fully implemented yet, deploying the little sensor fins gives you, of course, better sensor data. But on the other hand, it also increases your effective cross-section. Those are pointing out. Those are now more likely to get shot off. On the other hand, there are late ship designs that we intend to implement down the road, which also have like deployable structures with, say, engines on the end, where distancing them from the center now makes your ship more maneuverable because you have a larger moment arm. But again, you have the same risk of you have a larger cross-section to shoot. The ship is more vulnerable. Is it worth it to be more mobile or to be more durable? Up to you.
Right. I think, well, we're seeing a lot of good comments here too. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but Light Shadow is asking, any plans on having missions inside asteroids, big stations?
Yes.
The resounding
yes.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
our trailer, you can actually see that in our trailer. So check the description, do a search for In the Black trailer on YouTube. You will find actually some nice clips of that interior station battling, which is actually pretty intense, especially when you're playing with a team.
Yeah, the mining facility currently is being used for basically for team deathmatch. We had a really cool single player mission that we took it offline because it needs to be reworked. The idea was that in a Shrike, you've been sent in to disable the asteroid facility's defenses. And so you're flying through the facility to various nodes and deploying information warfare packet, all the while being hunted by killer drones. And that was one of the featured missions that we showed at Gamescom several years ago that attracted a lot of attention, and it was brutally difficult. But yeah, it was one of my favorites. We're going to bring that one back.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's very cool. So anyway, but don't feel bad about asking a question we covered in the past. I know there's new viewers watching. Welcome. Also, I wanted to say, again, sorry about my camera. I'm doing this. So my goal is to do this every Saturday, no matter what, hell or high water, every Saturday, 11 a.m., no matter where I am in the world. In the world today, I'm actually in the New York City area. I'm meeting with some robotics developers later today for my work. So I only got a few hours sleep last night because I came really late early this morning due to all the air traffic issues we're having. So anyway, but that's my commitment to the community and also to our team to engage with everybody on a weekly basis. So I want to welcome all the new viewers. We just added X as a streaming platform in this live stream. So we are now broadcasting to a new Twitch channel called In the Black. So feel free to share that news. I see we already have a viewer here watching from Twitch. He's asking, I don't know what kind of advertisement that's for, but maybe someone can let us know. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, we have a question here from Todd on YouTube. Maybe we should talk about this while you hear Zach. What's the effective AOE resonance of a nuke in a vacuum?
So the way a nuke kills you is quite different in space. On Earth, there's the pressure shockwave, there's the fireball. The radiation is a more long-term damage than the short-term destruction. In space, on the other hand, there's no material to form all that much of a fireball. If the nuke is not point blank, if the nuke is not on a surface, the only thing that can form the fireball is the material of the nuke, which is like maybe a ton. It's not all of the atmosphere around it. So the fireball is quite small. It very quickly dissipates into nothing. However, now on Earth, all of the radiation that comes out is very quickly absorbed by the air, and that's part of what contributes to the fireball. In space, it moves essentially unimpeded, and so that deadly radiation will still be across several kilometers. Now, how far away you have to be before it instantly kills you depends on the yield of the nuke. I want to say for our higher yields, for like a megaton nuke, it was still more than 10 kilometers distance before it would just instantly kill you. And all of that radiation at closer ranges getting absorbed by your ship is still going to cause it to start evaporating. That is how a nuke can destroy you in space, even from far away.
Crazy.
But what we're envisioning, though, are much smaller yields. In fact, sub-kiloton yields was one of the targets, because that could be a weapon that could be used somewhat freely with plausible deniability. You're not.
Yes.
In which case, as a missile warhead, a sub-kiloton nuke is still quite lethal at point-blank range, but a few kilometers away, it's not going to be that deadly.
Oh, I did do the math with you regarding that for like a W-54 equivalent, and essentially, if it's point blank, the little sphere of complete annihilation fits the Shrike. The Shrike is just gone, reduced to atoms.
Very cool. Thanks for that question. Go ahead, Dave. You guys say something else?
A Pegasus, maybe chunks of it will survive, but you will be dead regardless.
Very cool. Okay, so let me see. We have a good question from a new viewer here. I see from Logan, coming from YouTube. What do fighters offer that drones couldn't achieve just as easily? I don't really think one needs to justify fighters, but I'm curious if there's a reason for the setting or not to use drones. Well, I'll give my answer from just a high-level perspective when I originally wanted us to do this type of project. And that was, I envisioned a future where there would be a banning of leveraging AI and drones in some certain situations. And, we can look back at history and look very not too long ago, where as a global population, humans decided that, chemical weapons had no place in warfare. Even though your goal is to, battle someone else, another country, or someone inside the country, it was decided uniformly that is no place in warfare. So there are things that can be done by humans that are not done by humans. And people are probably familiar with things we have like Geneva Convention. So I envisioned a future where that might be also the case for, maybe some unforeseen event, that there's some really, really strict laws about leveraging some things when it comes to a battle in space, very similar to that previous example. So that's my kind of answer to why humans are in cockpits and in charge of the ships. Obviously, drones are a little different because drones can be controlled by humans and mostly are remotely, teleoperation, I guess. So maybe that's a little different, but what do you guys think about that question?
Well, teleoperated drones are susceptible to their comms links being disrupted. Any electronic system is subject to electronic warfare. Arguably, humans could be subjected to something similar. But fundamentally, it really comes down to what's more interesting, what's more engaging. Burnside's Zeroth law of science fiction. Humans in the cockpit are more interesting than drones.
Admittedly, we are somewhat narratively cooking the books. We did set up the universe to support humans in the cockpit to the greatest extent, like heavy EW environment. And there are a few other things, including a hand wave we kind of had to implement for game purposes was, okay, if your ship is destroyed, how on earth are you still playing? So in universe, we have a cellular reconstitution technology. So human life is incredibly cheap. If your body being destroyed is not equivalent to your death, then it's much easier for someone to say, oh, just keep throwing bodies at the problem.
Bring on clone number 3.
But there's also one other factor I want to bring up, which comes up in this discussion, and I think it's a big misconception, the idea that drones would be far more maneuverable than fighters. And I say this is a misconception because it depends on the technology you're using. As it happened for our fighter drives, for instance, the mass of life support and pilot is insignificant relative to the rest of the fighter, which means that it doesn't really affect your acceleration the theoretical acceleration profile. And your engines are not powerful enough to give you acceleration so high that they will instantly knock out the pilot, in which case there isn't really a point to giving it over to a drone. You're not going at like 10 plus Gs where the drone can still figure things out, but the pilot would have blacked out.
Okay, well, that's super helpful. And we also, another question here, which I think is a nice one. Here we put on the screen from Light Shadow. Any plans on having warhead missiles? Less damage, but more module hits. I'm not sure I understand that specifically.
Yeah.
Maybe
you could elaborate on that question a little bit.
If you can elaborate, that would be great. But speaking of missiles, so our effects artist, Ryad, he apologized he didn't have the update in the sheet that I use for these live streams, but he did share just a few minutes ago with me that the work that happened this week on his side was getting Hyperion destruction integrated. And that's
nice.
These destruction effects are actually very tricky and very involved, right? Because they involve lots of pieces, and the way that they explode or deteriorate, we're trying to make it as realistic as possible. So he also worked on the internal damage of Strike cockpit design, which is amazing. I'm really excited to see that, actually. So one of the areas of effects that I thought needed the most love was the cockpit. So explosions and cockpit. Because the players spend so much of their time in the cockpit, I feel like the cockpit really needs to really be a very compelling experience. So we've asked Riot and the rest of the team to kind of come up with some good ideas. What's a good realistic way to show damage inside the cockpit and other visual effects for things that might be happening. So some examples he provided are the control modules being fried and short-circuiting, monitors glitching, of course, post-processing of the hit effects like more shock when hit. So look forward to those things in an upcoming update of the demo and their main game. I should also clarify that we do plan to keep updating the demo. The update we did this week was specifically to address some comments, optimizations, and improvements, but we're going to continue doing that. That's not going to stop. And the demo will be available even through early access, and especially through early access. The reason why I say especially, I feel like it's really important to make sure that before players put $1 down on this game in early access, that they can get a feel for it in the demo and make sure that they like what we're going for and it's a type of game for them. We don't want people to ever have any buyer's regret. So use that demo to make sure it's the right fit. If you want to support the studio and the work we're doing, then we'd love for you to join early access. Okay, cool. So thanks, Ryan, for filling that in. All right. I know that there's a big question also that comes up a lot, and that is the different types of missiles we have in the game and when you use one versus the other. And I guess the missile types, but that could also go for lasers even. When would you want to use lasers? So what's our general guidance on the different type of weapons in the game and when you should use which? Who wants to take that? It might be more of a Jack question, but if you
the most powerful weapons are missiles and railguns. Railguns require more skill to use effectively, but once you develop that skill, you can be really, really deadly. Missiles are essentially fire and forget. So if you've got a bunch of missiles, you can do a lot of damage depending on the enemy's CWIS abilities. And that's something that we're obviously going to be going back and forth on the tuning and having distinct curve in the quality of CWIS versus quality of missile and how much it costs. Like right now, the game doesn't charge you per missile, and the missiles are all at the same quality. Down the road, you will pay more for more effective missiles. You will pay more for more effective CWIS. We'll have countermeasures as well. So there's going to be a steady arms race there, and for players a trade-off. And what can I afford? How much do I want to spend on the more effective weapons versus a lot of weapons? And with the gimbal or turret mounted weapons like lasers and the autocannons and miniguns, those are designed primarily as point defense, as close-in weapon systems to protect you from incoming missiles, or if you're flying escort, you're providing that service for other ships. But those weapons can be used as offensive weapons to take out other targets, other ships. They don't have the range of the missiles and the railguns, but if you've got a Pegasus or a Reyes with 6 VDB-20s, you're going to do a lot of damage at close range.
Very cool. Anything to add to that, Jack? Or we can save that also for another live stream we have Jack on.
There's a lot I could go into weapons that would probably merit a longer discussion. But I will say, as an addendum to Westman's point, that principally railguns and missiles have infinite range in space just because there's no air to slow things down. A projectile goes on forever. A missile goes on forever. Lasers, on the other hand, as it turns out, do have a fundamental range, and that's because the laser turret is essentially a big magnifying glass that's trying to focus on something a few miles away. Now, depending on the specific light you're using for the laser and how big the lens is, you can focus further away, but it's still going to be for something you could deploy on a fighter, it's still going to be only a few kilometers. Yeah. I think we might get tens of kilometers for some of the best ones we have in the game. But if you want to, you're not firing at someone from light seconds away with a Shrike.
And actually, I wanted to circle back. Dave, you mentioned CWIS earlier. There might be people who don't know what CWIS is. Do you want to give a quick definition?
Close-in weapon system. In the Expanse terminology, it's the PDBs, point defense batteries. It's automatic weapons that have a very high rate of fire and try to throw up a wall of lead towards any incoming missiles.
Yeah, it's really cool to see in action. It's pretty awesome. Very cool. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. Actually, we're almost at an hour. I want to thank all these great questions and comments coming in. I see we're hitting a high in our viewers, which is great, because we're broadcasting to X again for the first time. We touched on this earlier, but just really quick, I just want to make sure Todd knows that we are planning for multi-crew ships, probably 2-seaters, 3-seaters. I will we'll keep updated on the mission briefing. We'll share more information. Another good question here from Jacob on YouTube. Will our credits carry over from demo to early access? That's a resounding no. The demo is separate from early access. So demo is meant, again, to give people a taste and feel for what the gameplay is like, what the physics is like in the game, what the experience is like, so you kind of know whether you want to jump into early access. So if you're a big player and you get to early access demos where you can tell your friends, try that first before you try buy early access.
I'm sorry, Jacob.
Jacob, I'm very sorry to disappoint you, man. I'm really sorry, but that's how it goes. Listen, man, let's be realistic. The demo is free. There's no, yeah.
maybe I'm just throwing this out there, Edmar. Maybe we can look into some special badge or skin or something.
Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to that, actually. That's a good point. I think that we should reward people who gave us feedback in the demo and played the demo and then moved on to early access. We'll have to think of a good like in-game kind of term for those. Like in Kickstarter, you get those early backers. So who are those players in the beginning? Zach is thinking about it right now. You got an idea?
Well, very early on, we did have, like in the narrative, a specific very early core. Back when we were still Starfighter Inc., we had the titular Starfighter Inc., which were supposed to be some of the first fighter pilots in the galaxy, you can have them be like under that name, or even you get an automatic like license to be with them, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up. I want to really thank Zach. Zach, I think it would be really fantastic for to do a more in-depth live stream on specifically on the science. Maybe we do an AMA also on Reddit. I think that would be a lot of fun. So definitely keep your questions and comments coming. Again, I want to remind everybody, use that in-game feedback system that is live in the demo. I hope you enjoy the latest patch. We have the team working on the next patch now. I apologize for two things with this week's live stream. Number one, my camera's not working here. It's flipped over halfway through. So you have to just, I look semi-presentable. Let's say that. You just can't.
It's okay. We've always known you were a floating voice in the sky.
That's true.
Or should we say in the void?
That's true. And then I also, in future live streams, I'm going to make sure that I encourage our team to provide some videos showcasing the updates. That was the idea. I had prepared a video folder for the team to insert videos from this week's work that was empty. So I think there's miscommunication on that. So I will make sure, because as much as it's great to see our faces here, I want to make sure that the players can kind of see some of the stuff in the background the team's working on. So we'll improve that. And these live streams will obviously, we'll get better and better over time. So thank you for all your patience and for joining these mission briefings. They're a lot of fun to do. Look at this, MK Powers. We got to get you some kind of award.
You're a power user.
He's got 70 hours on the demo. That is amazing.
That's awesome.
MK Powers, I want to ask you, what is the main mission, or what are you playing in the demo to get those hours? Like, what are you focusing on? I'm really curious. Look, we got Jack is watching right now. He's saying awesome. Jack Bamias, he's the director of the studio and game. He is also the designer of Crysis and Far Cry, and a big fan favorite, MechWarrior 2. So big kudos to MK Powers on that. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a good way to describe the demo here. This is coming in from Logan. The demo is my training ground, so hopefully I don't suck at EA. That's and we want more players to not suck, because I think I've watched some streamers that play the game for the first time, and it is hard. It is hard in the beginning. It's hard for everybody.
I'll have you know, my very first playthrough, I managed to collide my Shrike into one of the interceptor cannons. I got congratulated by the announcer too. So awesome. Even we devs are still learning in some places.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I have to say though, the last big trade show that we were showing the game, and people they'd see the game on a big screen and like, oh, that looks really cool, and I'd invite, oh, come try it out. Oh, no, it looks too complicated. I don't really play this kind of game. Oh, it's not as bad as you think. I'll help you out. Come on. Within minutes, literally just a few minutes, there you see the grin start to form, and within 5-10 minutes, when's this coming out?
Yeah,
exactly. So but I'm not available to show up here and help you through. So, but yeah, we're working on that. We're working on videos, better tutorials. We do want to address that and really make the game a lot more accessible and welcoming to new players.
Yeah, onboarding is super critical. MK Powers followed up, said the 70 hours, a lot of it spent in conquest and free flight, where I maneuver around one enemy ship. That's awesome. Like he's saying, like Thoth Station. Okay, and we've got another follow-up comment from Robert here.
Yes, I know that pain.
That's awesome. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for watching today. That concludes mission briefing number 5. We'll be back next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Anyone from the team obviously is invited to join us, but we would love to see your questions come in during the week. Let us know what you want us to cover on this next live stream. Of course, we'll cover what we did in the following week, but we'll also cover what's coming up next. Thanks again, Jacob. Really appreciate the support from you and the other viewers today. You're the reason why we're doing this. So let us know how we can do better. All right. Have a great rest of the weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Will do.